Okay, the frustration that I have with recidivism is it doesn't exist for drug and alcohol addiction, and nor can it exist. Let me explain why. First of all, the vast majority of people that are addicted to drugs and or alcohol aren't getting into treatment. And the folks that are not getting into treatment that decide, as they often do, to stop using drugs or alcohol, and if they relapse or when they relapse, they oftentimes die. Those numbers aren't accounted for. Okay. There's one. And that is the vast majority of individuals that are hooked on drugs and addicted to drugs and alcohol. Okay. But now let's go over into the folks that are coming into a facility like my own, an outpatient, meaning they don't live there like they do in a residential. Okay. I've been doing this in an outpatient realm since February of 2019. I think next month will be my 6-year anniversary of doing this. In that entire time, I've not had one city, county, state, or federal agency come to me and say, hey, Tony, what are your numbers for people that have graduated from your program? I've never been asked. So now we also know that people like myself that own an outpatient facility, nobody's tracking those people as well. My problem is people like me aren't held accountable. I should be held accountable. Somebody should be coming to me and saying, hey, if you want to get a license to do this, you should be able to tell us, somebody that's going to track these numbers, what your success rate is. I'm frustrated. So if you're out there, anywhere you are, Googling what is recidivism, there's no number out there. Nobody knows. So if there's anybody that's saying that they have recidivism for people that are taking drugs and alcohol, it's a bogus number. I know for an absolute fact because there's nobody tracking these numbers. There's nobody finding out. And quite frankly, there's no way, it's an impossibility to determine what the recidivism rate is because once again, the vast majority of individuals that are addicted to drugs and or alcohol aren't being, there's nobody regulating them because they're not getting into treatment. And do you think those people, are they saying, hey, some agency, I decided to quit. And here's how long it's been since I've not used any drugs or drank any alcohol. That doesn't exist. And let's not talk about the people that actually have died. When they end up in some morgue someplace, there's no database that says, oh, this, they might recognize, oh, this was a drug overdose. Really? Where's that getting logged? I might get logged on their death certificate that this was a drug overdose. But to my knowledge, that's not getting put in any database. Look, if a government entity came out and said, hey, our system is terribly flawed, then maybe more of us would stand up and want to do something more about this or hold them accountable. Okay. So the system is designed for failure. It really is. And any kind of numbers, when you see numbers for recidivism, it's going to be associated with people that are getting rearrested, whether they're going back into prison or going back into jail. And those numbers can be tracked, obviously, because, well, when you get reoffended, there's a lot of procedures that somebody goes through when they go back into jail. So when you're looking at recidivism rates, okay, whatever those numbers are, you can add to those numbers because we know for an absolute fact, okay, that the vast majority of individuals that are going back into jail and or prison, there are drugs and or alcohol involved. So if you're seeing a recidivism rate at, I don't know, call it 46%, which I think is what the state of Utah says their recidivism rate is, or is it 44? It's national 44 and state 46, or it might be flip-flopped. I don't know which. It's 44, 46%. Whatever it is for the national or the state, we know that the vast majority of individuals that are going back into jail or prison, drugs and alcohol are involved in reference to the addictions. So we now know that you can, and once again, this is just a pie in the sky guesstimation, but it's 90% plus. Okay, so the question is, why do I care about the recidivism rate? Because the recidivism rate is a benchmark. If we would all figure out if we as a society of facility owners would take the time and, well, the little bit of money that it takes to figure out what our numbers are, we can start having conversations about what's wrong with our system, right? and we can figure out ways we can do things differently. If somebody comes to me and they say, well, what is your recidivism rate? And I actually know that I have a 90% failure. Maybe that's something I need to do differently then. Maybe if my failure rate is so great and I can show that, I might open my eyes and say, well, whatever I'm doing right now doesn't work. Maybe I should do better than a 10% success and a 90% failure. I if you go to any professional baseball team and somebody's batting average is they get one hit every time they come up to bat 10 times. So 90 times they strike out, 10 times they get a hit. They're not going to be playing on that team for very long. That is not. Oh, and by the way, I'm being generous at 90% failure. It's probably higher. So I care because I care about people. Okay, so the reason I care so much about these recidivism numbers or the lack thereof is because there's no accountability for people like myself, right? Because people are dying. And people are actually suffering. When I say people, I'm talking about the family members of the people that are stuck in their addictions. If we shine a light on the actual numbers, what they are, then people like myself, people that own facilities, will do more to track their numbers, to realize what's going on within their own organizations and learn how they can do things differently to make a difference. And just so you know, for the most part, the system is set up for failure for these people. If I'm a business owner, private insurance companies, the way they pay is designed for failure. And I'll explain. They will pay you. It's an all-inclusive pay rate, which means it doesn't matter what you do, what you have the patient do when they come into your facility. They're going to pay you, and we'll just use, I don't know, a $300 a day. So what happens is they're going to pay me X amount of dollars per day, no matter what I do. So as a business owner, it behooves me just to stick that person, any number of, I don't know, 10 or 12 or 15 people in a group room and have one person monitoring all 15 people, right? So if I pull somebody out of that group room to go do, I don't know, a therapy session with a therapist who's making, I don't know, between $35 and $55 an hour, I'm losing $35 to $55. And I'm losing more than that because whatever I'm getting paid for that person to be in the group room, I'm not getting that. And I'm paying that therapist to do the therapy. So if you go to any outpatient on planet Earth and you ask them, how often does your folks get in front of a master's level clinician? They're going to tell you once a week or once every 2 weeks. Because it doesn't make any sense from a business perspective to pull that person out of group. Because when I do, I'm losing money. That doesn't work. How does that benefit the person that's in treatment? And this is where I've got my hats off to Medicaid. Medicaid's leading. Look, everybody wants to, frown on Medicaid, but they're doing things right. With Medicaid, every time you do a modality, whether it's therapy, neurofeedback, case management, peer support, every one of these things is paid individually. So the more services you provide, the more money you make. It's brilliant. But private insurance companies, yeah, they're not doing it that way. Because I don't think private insurance companies want people to succeed. I really don't. What other alternative? There's no other way. There's no other solution there's no other answer as to why they're doing it this way. And not to mention the fact that those private insurance companies, they do these things called utilization reviews every 7 to 10 days, which by the way, cost people like me money. Where their therapist is sitting in a room with my therapist and the insurance agent trying to look at ways with my notes to figure out how the insurance companies, should stop paying. And that generally happens right in the smack dab middle of somebody's treatment. So what happens then? Well, we can't really treat them for free because we can't afford this to be treating people. And by the way, when we're treating somebody for free, we're actually not. We're paying them to get treatment because when they're not paying and we can't bill an insurance company for it, we're still paying a therapist. So we're actually paying somebody to get treatment. We can't afford to do that. So we're forced to discharge these people long before they're supposed to get discharged from their treatment. And so then they go out, back out into the world with not near the tools, right? Then, because they didn't finish their treatment and they weren't complete, something happens and they relapse. Now, if we're lucky, they won't die. But oftentimes, if their drug of choice is heroin or fentanyl, because their bodies over a period of time has developed a tolerance. We all know this. Okay. When they stop using, that tolerance, I don't know, you can see the tolerance goes down. Then when something triggers them to use again, they use oftentimes the same amount that they were using when they ended their drug career, and their body doesn't have a tolerance and they die. That's sinister. Perhaps another solution would be insurance companies get out of the treatment world. And by the way, the other hopeful, they don't die when they relapse. Well, then they go right back to where they started, which costs you more money because it's a revolving door. I have a great idea, insurance companies. Why don't you just let us do our jobs? And the reason they don't is because most people in my position are doing this for one reason and one reason only. And I'll give you two words, cha-ching. That's it. They want the money. Whether they want to admit it or not, it's the truth. They want the money. If they would just recognize that there's more meat on the bone, you're never going to run out of customers. Go to any court. It's public knowledge. Anybody can print up a court calendar and see all the people that are going through the district and justice courts. You're never going to run out of customers, ever. So maybe you should do things differently so you don't have the same people coming back and reusing these drugs. So why are these numbers so important to me? Because right now there is zero accountability in my world. There's nobody asking me, hey, Tony, what are your numbers? So when you see my number that's on the website, right, that number may change tomorrow. A minute ago, I was at 23%. I just had a guy relapse. So now, I don't know, it's going to go to, I think, 26, maybe 27%, meaning 27%, whatever it's going to end up at. That's when you see that number, that recidivism number, when you see that number on the website, that's a number associated with the number of people that actually that didn't stay clean. So you can subtract it. So let's just say if I was at 20%, that means 80% of my folks are still successfully staying stopped. So when you see that number, the recidivism number is associated with the rate in which people are relapsing. Okay. So I just had a guy, some family members committed suicide and he's in a tough way and he relapsed. So that number is going to change and it's always going to change. And so here's how this works. At Beacon Recovery, when you graduate from our program, and by the way, don't ask me when you're going to graduate because I don't know. If anybody says to you, how long is treatment? And you get in an outpatient and somebody says, how long is treatment? And you get a number in reference to a time period, that facility is being very irresponsible because there's no way it's very irresponsible to say when somebody's going to be beginning and ending their treatment because you don't know what's going to happen when they're in treatment, for crying out loud. Give me a break. Now, at Beacon Recovery, when they do graduate, right, they're in contact with us once a month for the first 3 months. Then after 3 months, they're along with everybody else and they're on the 3-month schedule. They're being contacted once a quarter. Now, when we contact them and they tell us that they have not used, we're going to go on the honor system that they're telling us the truth. That's all we have to go by. I can't force them to come in and give me a UA because they're not patients anymore, right? So we're going on their word. And until somebody gives me a better system, this is the one that I'm doing right now. But I can tell you this, very few, if any, are doing that. Nobody, because of course, that takes time, right? Which is money. It takes time and money. I was told recently, right, that this isn't a sustainable process. Really? Well, let's talk about that, not being sustainable. Why isn't it? Why can't we take some of the money that Medicaid is paying us for our current caseload and use that for the people that have already graduated? Why can't we do that? That means I make less money. Well, okay. Perhaps I shouldn't be doing this because I want to make a lot of money. Perhaps I should be doing this because I want people to stay stopped. There's a novel concept. So I don't make as much money. And by the way, how much is it going to take? What are you paying somebody 25, 30, $35 an hour to be on the phone? I'm no. But even if you are, so you're paying somebody $30 an hour to sit there and make a phone call for a couple hours once a month. You can't let go of 100 or so bucks to make this happen. And you can't let go of a couple grand to have a dinner once a year or every 2 years. Insurance companies are paying quite nicely for people to be in treatment. They really are. Take some of the money that you're making and spend it on these people. Give me a break, dude. No, man, that doesn't work. Nobody's holding us accountable. It's like the Wild West. We can do whatever we want. And nobody's asking us, what's your success or failure rate? All I'm saying is, why can't we? Why can't we make the phone calls, care enough about these people to ask them how they're doing? I mean, so I went out Christmas Eve. We were missing 8 people off of our list from graduates. And I went out this last Christmas Eve, and I was a little bit nervous about it until I knocked on the first door. Who, by the way, that's the guy that relapsed. If I don't go knock on his door, maybe his wife doesn't feel comfortable enough to make a phone call to me when I gave her my card. See what happens when we care enough about people? That's why we're doing this, right? I mean, is that why we're here? To teach people how to stay stopped and get their lives back? Because they have husbands and wives, and most importantly, they have children. So that number is important to me, that number of recidivism, because there's a lot riding on this. How do you put a value on a human soul? Right? You can't afford to keep track of these people after they've left your facility because you're not making any money from them anymore, but you're making money from the people that are in your treatment facility now. Take that money and spend it on them. And you know what? Might even set up a thing where the people that graduate can monitor themselves. But for right now, we're doing it. Now, if it gets to the point where I've got, thousands of people, wouldn't that be great that have graduated my program? Well, then we can do something similar to what the good folks over at AA do, where they monitor themselves, right? But for right now, Beacon's doing it, and we'll do it that's okay. We don't mind. So the question is, what do I want Beacon to be known for? Hmm. Wow. Um, I want Beacon to be known for a facility that loves people. I want Beacon to be known as a facility that genuinely cares about human life. Because we do, right? And we'll do things that are necessary. We'll spend the money. It's just money, right? Are we going to take money with us? What is the value of a soul? You can't put a price tag on that. Come on, guys. Take a little bit of the money you're making and keep track of these people after they've left your facility, right? Come on, insurance companies, not so much Medicaid, but private insurance companies. Follow Medicaid's lead. Instead of paying somebody all inclusive and encouraging them to not give good treatment, because that's what you're doing, you're encouraging them to give shitty service to these people. Because every time they grab somebody out of that group room, they're losing money. So the question is, who do I hope will hear this message? Um, well, on the federal level, this new administration would be great. And I already know, look, you can have your problems with President Trump. I could care. I don't care how he has mean tweets. Shut your pie hole. Who cares? Yeah, you can leave that part in. Really, I don't care if you don't like Trump. I do like Trump. Why? Because he cares about the military and he cares about, look, I've never met the man. It'd be great if I could, but I never have. But everything I've seen, he cares. I don't care if he's, made comments about women, probably said things that I thought, who knows? It doesn't matter. What I do know is that he can make a difference and he wants to make a difference. He does. And he has hired certain individuals in his cabinet. RFK, there's one for you. I don't think I've never met him either. I don't think he makes any bones about the fact that he is in recovery. That guy was a heroin addict. Everybody knows it. And he wants to make a difference. He does. And I believe it. We have to do things differently. So somebody's going to hear this. Anybody, right? Anybody. Look, if you hear this and you want to call my office and let's have a conversation about what we can do differently together, then let's. Other facility owners like myself. If there's somebody that owns an outpatient facility that wants to learn how to build Medicaid and be successful in doing so, I'd love to hear from you as well. My staff will teach you. We will train you on how to make a decent living with Medicaid, right? And use what Medicaid has given us. So Medicaid doesn't say, okay, folks, here's the rule book for Medicaid. Okay, today, turn to page 22. We're going to teach you. They don't do that. What they do is say, here are the rules, and they're incredibly difficult to find and to navigate. Well, I've done that. My staff and I have done that. We can teach you. So there's a person I would love to reach out to me, right? 435-239-8768. That's the number to my office. Okay. I think the website, it's info@beaconrecovery.com. You can send us an email asking any questions that you want to ask on that as well. If you want to learn how you can make a decent living building Medicaid, because it's not that difficult. So the question is, how is what we do beneficial to people that are seeking treatment? Okay. If you are currently seeking treatment, or if somebody that you know deserves to be in treatment, ask the right questions to any facility, right? Make sure that if they're taking Medicaid, that they're not going to charge you. Let me make sure I say that. If if a facility, if you're on Medicaid or somebody that you love is on Medicaid and is seeking treatment, and you're going to a facility that wants to take money from you while you're on Medicaid, run from that facility because they're not supposed to do that. Okay. Ask the right questions. What does a day look like? How often, what does a day look like in the life of treatment XYZ that I'm thinking of going to? How often does my loved one, or will I see a master's level clinician? Okay. Am I going to spend the entire day in group? Look, there's something to be said for group. I'm not saying that there's not, but it shouldn't be the bulk of the of the treatment. Do the research on the facility, right? And make sure that they're going to be doing the things that are going to benefit your folks. And ask them. Well, here's one for you. Ask them what their success rate is. Well, I took the time to understand what Medicaid does and doesn't do. So right out of the gate at Beacon Recovery, you're going to see a master's level clinician, a minimum of 4 times per week. Now, 2 of those days is with this therapy. The other 2 days are with this therapist. So 2 different therapists that you're going to be talking about the exact same problem. The purpose for that is, A, you're getting in front of a therapist more often than you do anywhere else, but you're getting 2 different perspectives on the same problem, right? And sometimes you might even see a third therapist within the same week, right? Getting different perspectives on the same issues that you're having. More individual is better. Less group is better. This isn't rocket science, right? Anybody will tell you, do the math with reference to a school teacher. If you have a classroom full of 10 kids versus a classroom with 40 kids, everybody knows those 10 kids are going to get a higher level of education. At Beacon Recovery, at any given time, our group room is empty because they are out getting individual services done. Therapy, neurofeedback, case management, peer support, breath work, hypnotherapy, right? We're ketamine, right? So there's if anything else I can think of that comes to me that it will benefit these people, I'm the guinea pig, right? I'm exploring the stem cell patches. I'm working with those right now that are on my body. I'm the guinea pig, right? Of everything we do at Beacon Recovery, I did first, right? All of it. Yeah, including ketamine. So I'm not opposed as a business owner to explore new things. I'm not. I mean, goodness gracious. When we first started doing neurofeedback, and I know we were the first people doing neurofeedback, right? When that got brought to me, I couldn't bill. I couldn't bill anybody for that, but I knew it worked. So I brought it in. So remember that thing I said, it's not, it's not a smart business move to pull somebody out of a group room. Well, I was pulling people out of anything else that I was billing for and sticking them in neurofeedback, but I wasn't able to bill anybody for it, but I knew it worked. Then Medicaid came out with new codes for neurofeedback. I was already doing neurofeedback for 3 or 4 months and losing my shorts financially. But neurofeedback really does work. I mean, neurofeedback has been out for quite some time, and there are some heavy hitters, right? Not the least of which is right here in Salt Lake City, University of Utah, right? Using it. Not so much for folks with drug addiction issues, but it definitely works. Neuroplasticity is a real thing. The brain can get regenerated with the proper stimulation, but nobody was reimbursing for neurofeedback, so therefore nobody was doing it. But I did because I believe it and I know it works. And 3 or 4 months in, Medicaid changed their codes. I didn't know that when I started with neurofeedback, but God did. And that's why he told me to do it. And that's why he brought it to me. Now, Medicaid reimburses and some private insurance companies are reimbursing for it as well. And now you're starting to see other facilities that are popping up using it, right? Which is good. What would I do if somebody comes to me with an idea for a new thing to add to treatment? What would I do? I would listen. Then I would say, is it a blue pill? I'll take it first. And I will try it on me because, well, I'm also in recovery, but I'm not an addict, right? I don't like that. I don't agree. I don't think that once somebody is an addict, that they are always an addict. I don't agree with that at all, right? I believe that once somebody is an addict and they get past it, they are in recovery, but not an addict for the rest of their life. And people are going to disagree with me and they can go pound sand, right? Look at your numbers and then look at mine. Shut your pie hole, whoever you are, right? You're going to tell me that people are addicts for the rest of their life. Well, what are your numbers? Are you even calculating your numbers? And there are going to be people that are out there that have been doing this for 20 or 30 or 40 years that are going to look at me and say, and I'm full of it. Well, you know what? What are your numbers then? Tell me your numbers. Let's compare notes to what your success rate is and mine. And if you're going to stay in that idiotic space that somebody is an addict for the rest of their life and you're going to bust my chops because I don't agree with you, let's see your numbers. Are you even calculating your numbers? So the question is, before we wrap up, what is something that I wish I would have said that I didn't say? I love you, Mom. I should have. I love you, Dad. Like, that's tell somebody you love them. That's what I wish that I would have shared that I love somebody more. You know what? Look, what's missing? What, I mean, at the end of the day, what is missing from this equation? It is the most powerful tool that God has, and it's love. That is the common denominator. That's what's love is what is missing, right? Love for ourselves. Oh, I just hit the microphone. But love for ourselves. What we seek for happiness isn't out there. It's right here. It's in our heart. Our heart is in control of us. It's not our brain. It's not up here. Okay. The emotion that comes from our heart, that, and we'll have some future podcasts that'll talk about this. Why am I sitting in front of this camera? Right. Um, not comfortable in the process. So the question is why? Um, why do you ask me these questions? So one of the branches I was in was the Army. In the Army, I worked in the emergency room before I went off into a war zone. Um, and in the emergency room, oftentimes people don't make it. They die. So the staff that was with me at the time, they were not taking these bodies downstairs with any level of reverence at all. And it's a human being, right? They're stopping along the way, talking about what they're going to have for lunch, what movie they're going to see, what girl they want to go out with. While the dead bodies, I mean, you can't see it in the hallway; it's covered, but still. So I started taking these bodies down myself. Well, this particular individual had taken an M16 on the firing range and put it to his chin and pulled the trigger. And when they brought this kid in, his brain was dripping off the gurney. So I took him down to our cooler and I unzipped his bag to look in his face. And I thought, what if I could have said something to you yesterday? Would you be here? And so I was, I didn't know. I was praying then to make a difference in these types of lives where people are choosing this because it is a choice. What if we say something different to somebody where they make a different choice? This little kid, he had to been all of 19 years old. He was in basic training, right? A black kid. And his head was, it was almost like you take a bowl and mush it down in sand. It was concaved and it was a perfect circle where that bullet just ripped the top of his head off. His family gets to see him like that at some point, right? Brothers, sisters, moms, dads. For what? So, what if we all do things differently? What if we all love one another? What if we take the time and listen to people? You know, in my world, we've lost some folks that have OD'd, right? And died. I don't want that. And if we can save just one, then we are successful. Beacon Recovery, unless somebody wants to show me their numbers, you can see the number on my website. But if you're going to show me your numbers, or anybody for that matter, you better know how you're getting those numbers. You can't just make that stuff up. As far as I know right now, and I challenge any facility out there, right? I have the best numbers in the United States of America, and I can prove it. Now, if you all are out there and you want to compete with me, let's go, right? Let's have a competition to see who has the best numbers. And you know what? I mean this. I hope you win. I hope whoever you are out there that wants to challenge me and get some numbers, show me your numbers. And I hope you beat me, but I don't think you're gonna. I'm pretty competitive. And this is a place where I want to win. I want to be number one, not because of my ego, but because people are freaking dying. And when they die, a family dies. And it's a long, I mean, my mom and dad both died of um, semi-natural causes. My dad was an alcoholic, died with the bottle in his hand, right? Not why I'm doing this, by the way. And my mom died of, I think, of a heart attack. And I think about my parents and I miss them. But imagine if somebody dies of a drug overdose. As a parent, do you beat yourself up? What if I could have done something different? As a brother or a sister, as a child, Maybe that's why dad did that, because he didn't love me. What did I do wrong? We carry this stuff with us. Let's not do that. Let's figure out a way together, right, to do this differently as a addiction recovery community. Okay. The reason I'm doing this video, the reason I do what I do with Beacon Recovery is because this is what God wants us to do. We are here to love one another. Doesn't matter if it's not a family member of us. It could be somebody out on the street. We can still love them. The question is, do I believe if the podcast, do I believe if the podcast is an expression of love? And the question originally was, why do we do the podcast? And I don't even know if I answered that question. But yeah, the podcast is an expression of love, right? Of love for uh, my fellow human beings, right? I mean, when I was in the emergency room, and these people, I would see these people, and I don't like crowds. You won't get me to go to a large. I mean, I'm sure the Jazz, great team. You will not catch me at one of their games sitting in this. I'm not going there. I'm not sitting in the stands. It's just a thing, right? If I go to one of those games anywhere, I'll be in the fringes. And if I am sitting down there, I'm nervous as all get out, right? So, um, but people are worth more than what they're getting right now from people like myself. They have much more value, people do, than what they're currently getting. So we as a community can start having conversations. If you want to be on a podcast, bring it. Get a hold of us. I gave you the number 435-239-8768. Okay, so the question is, do I consider myself a renegade or a, a rebel or a troublemaker? Um, no. Mm-mm. No, I do consider myself, however, a seeker of truth, right? Um, and I look, do I make mistakes? We want to call them mistakes, or do I get opportunities to learn? Because those aren't mistakes, and there are no such things as accidents, in my opinion. Am I a renegade? Uh, a troublemaker? You know what? I think that there's people out there that would consider me a troublemaker because when you're going along with the status quo, and somebody comes along and calls you out on your crap, you're going to call me a renegade or a troublemaker. Um, but no, I don't consider myself. I do, however, consider myself somebody that's not afraid to do things differently. Look, if we want different results, then we have to have different actions. Okay. And we have to come up with we have to come up with a plan to do things differently. And we have to implement those plans. Okay. Move forward in the right direction. I want different results. So I'm going to do things differently. Does somebody want to label that as a renegade? You know what? Kiss my what? I don't care. Really, that you do not enjoy the fact that I'm going to uh challenge you to do things differently. Period. Because I want different results for you as well. It doesn't really have to be at Beacon Recovery. Whatever facility that we're talking about, I'm going to encourage you to take a look at what you're doing, right? And have a different set of results. If your results aren't good, and by the way, if you don't even know, here we are. I'm going to go right back to that. If you don't know your results, if you don't know what's happening with your folks when they've graduated from your facility, you should. Now, you folks are probably going to say, oh, he's a do-gooder. And you know what? I don't care, right? We need to examine the system that we currently have, right? From within. And we should all want better.